project. Just for the recording, could you please give me your full name and your date of birth?
Vincent Azzarelli, August 11th, 1955.
Okay. And could you tell me what branch of military you served in?
I served 27 years in the U.S. Air Force.
Okay. And what war are you going to be talking about today?
Gulf War.
Okay. Why did you join the military?
Well, in 1973, the draft was still going on. And my lottery number, when I turned 19, would be about 18, I think. And I knew that they were still calling up, so I enlisted in the Air Force. And then my experience in the Air Force just made me want to stay in and go to college, get my commission, and be an officer in the Air Force and kind of make a difference.
Why did you choose the Air Force?
I like the color blue.
Okay.
I wasn't real thrilled ever about going in the Army, and I think I have an uncle who retired from the Air Force and flew B-24s and B-17s in World War II, and I think he probably made the most impact on me. And just there used to be this weekly TV show called 12 O'Clock High that we used to watch and turn our piano into a B-17 bomber to play in, so it just seemed like a good fit.
What was 12 O'Clock High? What?
It was a movie about B-17 bombers, and really an exercise in leadership that they actually show in, I think they still show it at Squadron Officers School and maybe at the Air Command and Staff College as an example of leadership styles and what you have to do to be a leader in wartime sometimes.
Where did you first see this film?
I'm sure it was on TV, in the movies. Who's in it? Gregory Peck's the lead. He's Colonel Savage, and it's a real good exercise, psychological exercise and sociological exercise in men at war, and the leadership that you have to use to motivate them and make it work.
Okay. During your service in the Air Force, tell me a little bit about what you did.
I did a lot of different stuff.
Okay. Where'd you start?
Well, I started at the gateway of the Air Force, Lackland Air Force Base, when I was enlisted, and then was assigned to Griffiths Air Force Base, and then Niagara Falls Air Force Base when I was going to college. I got my commission in 1978 at Medina Air Force Base, or Medina Complex at Lackland. Went out to Navigator School in California, and then the Weapons Controller School in Florida, and had an assignment in Syracuse in the Air Defense Center, then Alaska on a mountaintop, Tyndall Air Force Base, where we brought a new system online. Then a headquarters assignment at Langley Air Force Base, where I was responsible for the standardization of an evaluation of all the ground environment air defense radars and control centers in the CONUS, Iceland, and Puerto Rico. So I got to travel a lot and evaluate and inspect and make sure everybody was doing everything the right way. And then I took an assignment to Iceland, where I was responsible for bringing a radar system online and a control center as the chief of test, and then as the director of command and control and an air battle manager, where I flew on the AWACS and directed the intercepts and surveillance of Soviet bombers. And then I went to Tinker Air Force Base and became a mission crew commander and an air battle manager on the AWACS. Did 2 tours there, actually. In between, I was the commander of a radar site in Bangor, Maine, over the horizon radar. I've had different command jobs and just did stuff everywhere. And then my last assignment in the Air Force, I spent 2 years as an advisor and flight instructor to the Royal Saudi Air Force.
Interesting.
So, and then I came home.
Tell me about the Gulf War.
I was in AWACS when, actually AWACS is a pretty unique system. What's evolved over time is it was actually designed in the 60s and early 70s and fielded in the middle to late 70s. And it's a radar platform, an airborne radar platform that's a follow-on to the EC-121s. And their whole job is to surveil the battlefield, the air battlefield, if you will, and provide air cover, direction, command and control to the air commander. AWAC spent a long time in Saudi Arabia, basically surveilling the Iran-Iraq war. And there was about there's probably about an 8-month break where we left Saudi Arabia in April, I believe, of '90, and got very involved in drug missions, and would deploy down to Roosevelt Roads Naval Air Station in Puerto Rico and fly drug missions through the Caribbean and Central and South America, surveilling for drug runners and airplanes and that sort of thing. And then naturally the invasion of Kuwait was in August of that year. I was in Puerto Rico, I think, as the Assistant Director of Operations for the deployment when the Kuwait invasion happened. So I was down there, my whole squadron was down there, and as it came to be, we rotated through there, went up to Iceland and pulled an alert, and then did a spin-up with the USS America Task Force, the aircraft carrier and its task force, in I think October, and then deployed in mid-November, early December to Saudi Arabia for Desert Shield, and then worked into Desert Storm.
Did you think in your career in the military, did you think that you'd be involved in a war? Did you see this coming?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting question. I think the time I spent in the military, the majority of it was we were this deterrent force that kept the Soviet Union and its client states from invading other countries, and we were kind of there, and if we were strong and big, everyone was afraid of us. So I never thought that there'd be some sort of war, but at the same time, being in the Air Force and flying the kind of weapon system we flew, we always planned for it and expected it to happen, so we were prepared for it. But I think personally, and most guys my age who were in the service really were brought up to believe a strong military was a deterrent force, and the last thing we ever wanted to do was go to war, but when we went, we were ready. I almost would hazard a guess to say we were kind of excited about it.
Okay.
And that's because, we trained for years to do this, and we kind of wanted to prove ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a stupidity sometimes, and wanting to go and do it. So.
What was the training like? What prepared you for this?
Actually, my whole career, I think all of us, our whole careers, especially in AWACS, prepared it for us because we trained pretty hard, and we were lucky to have squadron and wing commanders, and even the flight commanders at my level, who really believed in train the way you're going to fight, and then fight the way you trained. And we did a lot of additional training because our crews became pretty large. Our standard crew was about 36 people on the plane. This is my crew, or majority of my crew, in Saudi Arabia.
So men and women?
Men and women,
Okay.
So there were intense simulation spin-ups, and then we spent 2 weeks out in the Caribbean with the Naval Task Force that was going to practice joint operations and really spin up our crew for what to expect. So it was a very intense situation. And then even when we first got there, we flew some training missions with people who'd been there and oriented us to the systems and procedures that we'd be using. And we were actually graded for our first several flights, to where it became we weren't only worried about the enemy, we were worried about doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew if we did well with the people who were evaluating us, we'd get through everything fine.
Do you remember some of your instructors?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about them.
I think the whole AWACS contingent went through a very unique time there. AWACS is a huge weapon system. There's the wing's about 10,000 people. And at that point, I think about half the wing was deployed. I'm not real sure, and the numbers are probably classified. But there was, in any organizations, there's the guys up at the top, there's the guys at the bottom, and the guys in the middle. And the system itself kind of weeded out the wheat from the chaff. Mm-hmm. And we all wanted to be the wheat, not the chaff, because there were people being sent home who, in the eyes of the people evaluating, just couldn't measure up. It was kind of an interesting system because, if I remember correctly, you got into country, You got about 12 hours to recover from the trip over. And then you went through some academic training for a day or two, and then you went and flew a couple missions. And the instructors, we usually flew with several instructors in each of the different positions in the plane. We flew with an air battle manager instructor, an MCC. There was a couple weapons guys, a couple surveillance guys, and one or two of the technicians on the plane that helped everybody get oriented to the way we were going to operate in this theater. So, you know, and it was never the same person. There was a whole crew of about 15 of this team, the tactics team that did all this for us. And to the point where we always flew with one or two tactics guys because they held a sealed battle plan that wouldn't be opened during Desert Shield unless an attack happened. And then later on, that became that wasn't so much the issue once Desert Storm started on January 16th. So yeah, so it was pretty tense at that point. I think there was a lot of anxiety about making the grade, if you will. But our crew had a couple of rough flights and did really well. I think we were actually selected to fly on the opening night of the battle. So we must have done something right and proved we could do something. There was an entire spin-up of all the forces during Desert Shield, where we'd launch tankers and fighters and have exercises to practice specific parts of what the battle was going to be and the battle plan was going to be. And that was always done outside the radar range of the Iraqi radars. So that was always an interesting exercise for everybody. And I think if nothing else, our crew became kind of known as a crew who could work through any problem and accomplish what we had to get done. It might not always be real pretty, but we'd accomplish what was out there and stuck for us to do.
Tell me about Desert Shield. Tell me about day one.
Oh, Desert Shield?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't there. I was in Puerto Rico drinking pina coladas. But the way it worked at Tinker, one squadron's kind of deployed, one's home squadron, and one squadron's kind of alert. And I believe the 963rd was the lead squadron to deploy. And so I wasn't there when they left in August.
Okay.
I didn't get there till later. And they tell me that it was just, for the AWACS it was kind of interesting because they went back to where they had been during ELF 1, which was the task group that was in Saudi Arabia to watch the Iran-Iraq war.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they went back right to the El Yamama Hotel in downtown Riyadh and took back their old quarters. And it wasn't until later on that they moved all of us out to Escon Village. And they moved everybody out of downtown Riyadh except for the command staffs. And Escon Village is a beautiful housing complex built for the Bedouins with these wonderful ornate villas, or not ornate, but very, very nice villas with marble floors and everything, and a couple high-rises. And the whole AWACS contingent moved there. A lot of the support people for the command staff moved there. Headquarters people moved there. There was a medevac hospital was stationed right by us in the compound. And then the Army would come there for R&R because they had a high-rise they used. So basically I think the schedule was we flew like 5 days, and we were scheduled 15-hour missions or 16-hour missions, a 24-hour duty day. And we would fly, get 16 hours off, fly for 5 days, and then get a day off, and then go back into our schedule again. And in between there, we'd pull alert somehow. And
What were you looking for when you flew the mission?
during Desert Shield, the mission was, and it was usually 1 or 2 AWACS airborne all the time, with some fighter cover, just to watch the Iraqis to see what they were going to do, really, and to be the road bumps, if you will, the speed bumps, so they couldn't spring a surprise attack on us. So we flew 24-hour sorties to 24-hour orbits out over the Iraqi-Saudi border.
Did anyone ever shoot at you?
Did anyone ever shoot at me? I think some people tried.
Okay.
But, that we were really lucky during Desert Storm, and there's 2 very significant and different operations going during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. I particularly remember one. We had pulled alert, I think, on Christmas Day, and alert was right down by our planes on the runway, so we could get to them right away. We lived in tents, and the day after Christmas, we were scrambled first thing in the morning, and I remember a colonel that I knew from a previous assignment who worked for General Horner was at the plane to meet us, and we took off and went to fly some training sorties with some fighters. And when I talked to this individual, I was like, why are we doing this? This is pretty crazy up here on the border, flying training sorties with fighters. And he said, well, I think it was one of those things that we're trying to kind of tweak the Iraqi radars and command and control system to see what they do if they saw a bunch of fighters up there, so that was a pretty tense moment, and but we worked through it and came home, and everything was fine. And then there was just this continual training cycle, an orientation cycle, until George Bush kind of drew the line in the sand. And I think I've got it somewhere here in my journal. Yeah, I think once he drew the line in the sand, we kind of knew something was going to happen, and it's when the training cycle kind of picked up, and there became more of an awareness of what was going to go on, and we just the whole area, the whole compound started to act a little different. There was more, I want to say, realization that this was really fearful now, and people were kind of tense about it. I remember at night I would go out for a walk, and there were the nurses from the AWAC hospital would be out on their villa steps, and they were always pretty upset because they were reservists. And they had changed some of the procedures they were going to use, so that they were going to use C-130s to land behind the Army troops to pick them up to evacuate them, rather than just in the C-10s, the 141s for medevac. So in these courtyards behind our villas, they did a mock-up of a C-130, and the nurses would go out, and the medic teams would go out, the medevac teams would go out and do CALs, and they filled up water bottles with sand to build up some aerobic stuff, and would mock up in all their chem gear and everything, and practice loading C-130. And for them it was a little different because they were reservists, so there was a real sense that that's not why they joined the reserves. They thought it'd just be kind of, well, we'll do this, it'll be fun, and we'll never have to go to war. And they went, and they were pretty upset, and I remember a lot of them would be out sitting alone a lot, just crying and upset, like they, pretty natural. I'm sure there were guys out there doing the same thing. And then, we finally got to the point where we got a big briefing, and it was kind of like 12 o'clock high, where we all got called in this big room. And one of the things I remember pretty specifically about the briefing, and I'm pretty sure it was General Clausen who gave the briefing, and he talked about doing our jobs, and no one was going home till the war was over. And he talked about expecting a 30%, a high attrition rate in our weapon system the first 5 days. And we had always kind of been trained to understand that, but it was kind of one of those things where when he said it, because we were really in a theater going to war, we all kind of looked around and we thought like 30% attrition. And there were only, I don't know, there's probably about 20 crews there at that time. So we kind of all looked around and we figured, well, we got about a 20% chance, 30% chance of getting through this. And the thing most people don't realize about AWAC, it's like the biggest target in the sky. I mean, we're a big 707. We've got no defensive systems on it, and we're a big radar platform that, like, we're a target for any Air Force to take out, or what they call a HAVA, high value airborne assets. So we kind of knew that, but we were just kind of, okay, we'll just do this and get along, not unlike B-17 pilots in Europe in World War II. And you know, that's just the way things started for us. And then that was about it. That's the way it started. Can I get a glass of water?
Definitely. I can get you a glass of water.
Okay. And maybe a piece of paper, because I'll... Okay. Well, I mean, kind of comes up like that.
You can zoom in on it.
Well, let me finish then.
Okay.
Put some more points in. This is 3 odds down here. This would be tanker tracks with cells of tankers in them, flights of tankers in them. And what was interesting is this command AWACS kind of was got all the information from the other 3, and their job bringing the sorties up through here, the packages, and then they would relieve each of these guys when there was time to refuel. So a package that came through any of these corridors could have as little as 20 planes and as much as 60 fighter and bomber aircraft in it. And at the same time, there were other planes flying underneath our orbit to help protect us and everyone else. We briefed and trained for about, did academic training and briefings to prepare for the first night for 2 days, and I kind of chalkboarded it. And on the plane that night, whenever we flew, when the war started, we flew with a command staff that represented General Horner on the plane, so that if we were ever out of radio contact, there was a 06 or 07 on the plane that could make decisions for us. The first night of the war, my crew flew in the command plane, which necessitated us to be familiar with all 3 corridors and what activity would be in them, because if we came up to relieve this guy for refueling and he broke or couldn't refuel, we had to fill in for him. So while you know, it was just a little more stressful, a little more work to know, because you had to be able to fit into 3 different corridors and be able to back these guys up if they had any problems. So it was always like, I thought it was probably more exciting than just being a 1 corridor guy, because you got to do everything in all 3 quarters of attack, and it was kind of exciting. Over here, you got to work with the Navy, which was always exciting.
Mm-hmm. How many people were in your crew?
Our crew was basically anywhere from 35 to 36 people from the squadron, and then we usually were augmented by a command staff, battle management staff. They called the ACE, the Airborne Command Element, from General Horner's staff, and it was usually a senior colonel or general, a couple of fighter guys and tanker guys. The AWACS itself looks something like this inside. You know, there's the pilot, co-pilot, an engineer, and a navigator, and then we have a comm systems operator and a comm technician, and then a computer operator, and then 3 weapons, get 6, and I said over here, and then there was a guy here, 2 guys here, and then another row of 3 guys. These were weapons guys. I sat here, the mission crew commander and the senior director, and another guy that usually took care of all our HAVA stuff. And then the surveillance team, for the most part, and the intel guy sat back there. The radar operator sat here, computer guy and radio guys. And then we had some airline seats over here that the command elements sat in. So, what people don't realize is we're sitting in this plane. We usually listen to 4 or 5 radios and 3 intercoms, and everyone's talking at us. And, like my guys would check in. Everybody who's coming up to fly, be responsible for refueling. And we usually did a lot of the CSAR activity, combat search and rescue activity, because of our ability to have the eyes and see everything. So what happened was, what we learned the first couple nights was, the AWACS is up here rolling around, and we got this huge radar that, according to like releasable information, can see about 300 miles. Well, pilots who are fighting and going down and fighting on the ground love to know what's up above them and coming at them. So instead of going to other people to talk to, they'd always come back and keep talking to us, because we gave out regular threat calls, and there were code words we used to let people know there was inbound traffic from the Iraqis and whatever. So we always had that going, and ended up doing more work than we were actually tasked to do in the Air Tasking Order, the ATO. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was always exciting. We did fly with augmented crews, but there wasn't much augmentation really, because no one could relax on the plane. We got into that 6-day cycle, 7-day flying cycle, where you would fly a 12, 14, 15, 16-hour mission, debrief it, get 16 hours off, come back, brief, go fly again. So you're constantly flying like day, night, day, night, day, night, day off, day of alert, day, night, day, night, day, night, day, night. But I don't think anyone really ever slept on the plane. When we went into refuel, which only took about 15 or 20 minutes, you could take a short combat nap, or you could catch up on all the work you had to do and be ready for the next cycle. So it was amazing how much, it was just the adrenaline flow just kept you going, and it was just unbelievable. We landed one time at the airport in Riyadh, the international airport, because the runway was closed at the Riyadh Air Base, and they had to send a bus down to get us. And we got off the plane, and the crew fell asleep under the wing, while planes were taxiing around and everything. And everyone was always just that tired that you slept, and you slept pretty hard, and you got up and went and did it again. I mean, it was really something. So I guess it's like that in all wars, and anybody who flies, because of what you do, it's a lot different, I think, for the ground guys. That's about it. Well, no, that's not it. There's a lot more.
Yeah. What about what was your crew's role in search and rescue? You said you did a lot of that, but what exactly were you just
identifying? I don't know that we did a lot of it. I think it was actually tasked out to another unit, but because we had better communications and we could see more, we did have some role in it. I think one night when we were up in the east and over here in the central, helping some guys get picked up. One night I remember was over here when the Marines were engaged and fighting the Republican Guards over here. A lot of packages were coming up with missions up across the border in Iraq, and I remember diverting our missions to give ground air support to the Marines here that were fighting with some Iraqi armor, and we did that most of the night, and it was pretty unique. Each quarter kind of had its own missions. The most heavily engaged was always the East Quarter. The Central Quarter ran pretty straightforward missions because there wasn't a lot of emplacements and a lot of armor over here. And then over here in the West, we became they ran up into this area where there was a heavy concentration of Iraqi military, both ground and potential air. And these missions were really over here to protect Israel. And this is where a majority of the Scud hunter killer teams were. So when you went over here, you did a lot of that, and there was a lot of special operations going on. So that was mostly over on this side too, which was very intense for all of us, I think. And these were the sorties where we heard people whispering in radios for help and stuff. And you kind of, you never forget that stuff. And
did you just relay to a ground crew to go get them, or how did...
Actually, what we do is, whenever we flew in the West, we always flew with some special operations guys who had some separate codes and frequencies to use. And if they needed help, we would divert a Scud hunter killer team, or divert a package, or call a package up to go in and help them. And I remember one particular incident where there were some people surrounded by an armor brigade that we had to call in some support for to get them out. And that's where all the whispering goes on. It's all real quiet. And you just get them out. Do what you got to do and get your job done. That's all.
Yeah.
And so, as a crew, we were pretty lucky. I think we had a great reputation. I'm real proud to have flown with all these guys, and you know, some of them we've been assigned again on different assignments. And as a matter of fact, Billy Young here was actually my deputy in Saudi Arabia on my last assignment. And there's these guys I still keep in touch with and keep in touch with me, and you know, I do anything for them, and I think they feel the same way about me. We're all pretty close because we did this together, and it's something we'll always have and share. So.
Okay, I'm gonna actually put this.
That they were, I don't know if you could read that stuff. It's what they were doing in the leaflet drops to the Iraqis. If you want to take a good look at it there.
Just warning, this is only the beginning. This could have been a real bomb. We try not to bomb innocent people, but Saddam is leading you to death. We want you to know he is the reason for the bombs. And Saddam Hussein's aggression against his neighbors is the reason for fighting. We try only to destroy his military targets. Do not blame us. Blame Saddam. Do you know who came up with these?
Probably somebody in the bowels of the Pentagon. I don't know.
Okay. What was the purpose of the illustrations?
In case I couldn't read.
Okay. That's intimidating. This is your first and last warning. Tomorrow, the 20th Infantry Division will be bombed. Flee this location now. Do you think the flyer drops were successful in getting the innocents out?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. You know, that part of the whole conflict was very unique for us because there were a lot of times, you know, in AWACS you have this big overall picture of what went on, and you're getting all this information. So we would land and ask for the intel guys to give us a debrief on how effective we were with our packages and our quarters, or how did the night go, and they'd always be, well, we don't know, we can't tell you. And we go back to our villas, and at that time in Saudi Arabia, the one station we got all the time was CNN. So we could kind of go home and watch CNN and see what we did that night or that day. So we were getting like almost immediate feedback on what was going on. And I know, you know, there was the concern that that some of the bunker buster bombs we were using were destroying bunkers but killing innocent people, and it's a terrible thing. And you know, I think professional military guys, professional military men and women, we go through enough training that one, we know war is terrible, so war is really the last political act of diplomacy. I mean, it's the last thing. So by the time you get to that stage, everybody's kind of got to realize that there's going to be like damage and death, and there's going to be what they refer to as collateral damage, or what you said, getting the innocents out of the way. The innocents never get out of the way. And you know, you could go through history, and that was always the case. Because some people are just obstinate. Some people say stuff like, you know, it's even happened during the Civil War in this country, like, I'm not leaving my land, this is my house, I'll live and die here. And at the same time, there's military guys who think that their bunker's safe, and, you know, and I'm going to bring my family into the bunker with me because I know they won't be able to hit it. And it's always going to get hit, because it's the nature of war. So it's what's referred to, I guess, as the fog of war. It's one of those things, no matter what you do, you can never solve, because there's still going to be some people that aren't going to pay attention to that. And that's one of the things, you know, when you go through a training to be in a bomber crew, even today in the military, and a fighter guy, you know, you go through psychological training, and that's one of the things they ask you, what can you deal with? One of the things they asked me when I went through psychological interviews was, can you deal with innocent people being killed as a result of what you did? And I was like, well, you know, if I'm doing what I'm told to do and everyone realizes this is a target, can I deal with it? Well, yeah, I guess I'll have to, because I don't want to go crazy right now. So, I mean, and I think that's the attitude of a lot of guys. I don't know. I mean, that's my attitude. I do my job the best I can within the limits of what I'm supposed to do, and hopefully nothing bad happens. But war is bad. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a 40. You know, this was a 42-day war where one guy didn't fight back too much, and that's mostly because it was all in the air. I mean, when push came to shove with the ground troops, I mean, they fought back as best they could, trying to escape. And who knows what will happen going into Iraq a second time. After 2 years in that part of the world, I think that it could be a lot uglier than it was before if we do a ground war, because you're invading people's turf and their land and their like tribal heritage. So I don't know.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about the days off. What did you do?
Slept. Washed our clothes. One of the things that did happen to us on our days off, a couple things. First, you know, it was a dry war.
Okay. I didn't know that.
We weren't supposed to have alcohol there, which is contrary to any good military guy fighting in a war, I guess. And now that I'm retired, and I don't think they'd call me back and court-martial me for it, but we all violated General Order No. 1 on booze. I got some sent to me in Listerine bottles, and I'll always be thankful to my sister-in-law for that. And we also learned how to make wine in those 5-gallon water bottles with Welch's grape juice and sugar and yeast. It took about 3 weeks, and you could mix it up. And that's where the nurses helped, because they would give us tape and rubber gloves to tape on the top of the bottle. And it took about 3 weeks, and you can mix that up and mix it with like 7-Up or something. You had a pretty potent wine cooler. And so yeah, we would get a little tipsy every now and then, and I think we traded some wine with some Navy guys for beer, and we did go to a party one night after flying at a compound some Navy guys were living in, a Swedish compound in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, where there was beer and some other stuff the Swedes made that was just wonderful. And we raided their kitchen that night and had like roast beef and cold lobster. And I actually fell asleep at their pool, and got back the next day and kind of got yelled at. But
I was going to ask, did anyone get in trouble for violating this?
we didn't tell them we were drinking, and we kind of denied everything. So and I, it's kind of unique. If you look at the picture and you see the picture, so everyone's got like big mustaches. They're totally out of regulation, and our hair, we didn't worry about getting haircuts, and we kind of wore whatever kind of patches we want on our uniform, and we kind of knew the war was over when we were told to go trim up our mustaches, put our right patches on, and get back into regulation. So, yeah, I think when the war went on, everybody was kind of like, look the other way. These guys are at risk all the time. Let them express themselves any way they can.
So it was a morale issue.
Yeah, and yeah, pretty much. And the food was pretty good most of the time. Just got boring.
Mm-hmm.
How many
What
times?
kind of food did you have?
Actually, the food was pretty good. The Saudis provided the food, and they had these like Sri Lankan guys that cooked it. So it was pretty good. The only thing they did was they kind of got mad because we always ate so much ice cream.
Oh.
We had an ice cream machine in our mess tent, kind of like a mess tent. This huge tent, and the food was pretty good, pretty balanced. I mean, fresh vegetables and fruit, a lot of rice, not many potatoes.
Was it Western style food? Was it stuff you were used to?
Yeah, it was pretty Western style, and it was good hearty food. It was okay, and we got the same thing on the plane. The first 5 days of the war, I think what happened was around the 14th or 13th of January. They kicked all the third world nationals off the compound that were doing stuff like cooking and laundry and all this other stuff, and because they didn't want anybody poisoning us. And so we went to 2 hot meals a day, breakfast and supper. They issued an MRE at lunch.
What is that?
MRE, meals ready to eat, or meals rejected by everyone. How you feel?
Just add water.
And camels wouldn't even eat them, I guess, out in the desert. So, that other than that 5-day, 6-day gap where the Army was running the mess hall, food was pretty good. I think during around Christmas time, Bob Hope came and sang Christmas carols with his wife, and I thought that was kind of unique because I remember my father telling me stories about how he missed every Bob Hope show that was ever on the island he was on during World War II, because he had to go do something. So, I was like, okay, I finally got to see one. And there were probably, guys there who felt the same way. Their grandfathers and fathers had seen Bob Hope shows, and now they were. So there's probably a lot of that going on. And
did a lot of people turn out to see the show?
Oh yeah, because there was nothing else to do.
Okay.
There was a place. There was like a gym there, I think, they had set up, and like I wasn't about to work out if I was. It just didn't thrill me at that point. And there was a library that you could go to and get like paperbacks and stuff.
Who ran the library?
The military.
Okay.
And there was like a Red Cross place where you could get stuff, and chaplains had stuff. And you could get movies and watch movies in your villa, because I think the Japanese donation to the effort was every villa got like a big screen, TV and a VCR. So we could go. There was some place where you could get movies to watch, and so you watched videos till you fell asleep or something. Villas were pretty nice. We shared a villa. I think at one time there were 5 guys and 3 women living in our villa, and we're all officers, so it was a pretty good deal. And I don't know, living conditions weren't that bad. I mean, and I guess I was pretty hard with my crew whenever they complained about living, because I knew the Army guys, Marines were living a lot worse. Considering they were coming to our compound for R&R, so I was like, shut up, get a grip. But that's like the Air Force way: build the officers and the NCO club first, and then build the runway. But probably flying. We did a lot of exciting stuff, and our crew was responsible for one of the shoot downs on January 24th. We were flying in the east. We had an orbit going on up here, and what happened was, as we were orbiting up here, one of our packages, all our packages were returning from a strike, and the Navy was coming back. And just as our packages were crossing over into Saudi Arabia, we noticed planes starting to take off from all the Iraqi bases. And we started getting a little nervous. We started calling in and asking for ground alert scrambles to get more planes up in the air, because at one point I think we had kind of like 30 or 40, up to 60 planes airborne. And we noticed them heading south over here, and we were real concerned that it was some stragglers from the Navy. So we kept trying to make sure it wasn't a Navy guy. And as these stragglers came down, we were able to continue to track them. And luckily we had 2 Saudi interceptors, 2 F-15s, on CAP right here, Combat Air Patrol. So I gave the controller the authorization to go intercept them. And the Saudis wouldn't break Kuwaiti airspace or go out of their own airspace. So they kind of waited till these 2 planes came down, and we gave the intercept order, and then we gave the kill order to shoot them down. And there were actually 2 Iraqi F-1s going to bomb Ras Tanura down here, which is a big oil refinery center for the Saudis. So that was a pretty exciting time for the crew and all of us. And what's kind of unique about that for me was that Captain Shirani was the exec to the Air Force Saudi general running the Air Force when I go back as an instructor, and we meet and talk. And he tells me how he shot down the Iraqis, and I'm like, yeah, our crew controlled you that day. It was this guy. So it was kind of just, I've been very lucky that I went to Saudi Arabia 3 times in my career. Once in 1981, again for the Gulf War, and then this last time. And all the people I met from the first time, like anywhere else, had risen in rank just like I had, and helped me make my job much easier and me more effective in my job, because they trusted me and knew me and everything else. But do you have any questions?
Were there any new guys in your crew?
Oh yeah. Oh heck yeah. Most of my crew was a hard crew, and we had been flying together for about a year when we went, and then we got augmented by some guys. Billy here was off another flight and brand new to the squadron, and only been in the squadron several months, and we took him with us. The navigator wasn't part of our hard crew, and this poor guy was in a terrible motorcycle accident, and a military, he was medically retired from the military. But most of us, and this guy was from a different flight and augmented us and came on our crew. And this guy, Rat Boy.
Rat Boy.
Yeah. And this guy was the intel guy from Air Force Intelligence and Systems, Electronic Systems Intelligence, that came in and augmented our crew. But the rest of us had all been flying together for a year or more. We were all in the same flight. I was the flight commander, and this was basically my hard crew. And you know, Dougie's a colonel now. Billy's a colonel. Large unit's a colonel. Mel's retired. Tracy's in the reserves. I don't know what happened to those 2 guys. He's retired. He's medically retired. Kim's a major in the reserves, or a lieutenant colonel in the reserves now. Debbie's married and has 2 kids, still in the reserves. He got out. Tim Frost, my senior director, my right-hand man, I think he's a major. I know he's a major. Might be a lieutenant colonel now in this last promotion cycle, in the reserves in the AWACS squadron. This Tim got out of the Air Force and is working at Snap-on Tools, last I heard. John Perleone, great pilot. Can't say enough about him. Just great. And he's still in the Air Force flying, I think, rivet joint out of Georgia now. I don't know what Rap Boy's doing anymore. Kind of lost track of him. Red got out as a country western singer. And Spug's still in the Air Force, flying around somewhere. And Sean, I think, is a pilot for one of the airlines. And then there's some maintenance guys in the background.
Have you ever talked about having a reunion?
The AWACS has a reunion like every 5 years. And they just had one last June, but I wasn't able to get to it because my son graduated from high school that weekend.
Okay.
But we do have our own website, so it's easy to like find out where guys are and kind of keep in touch.
Do you know the URL for the website?
I don't remember it
Okay.
offhand. It's in my favorites, so
Okay.
remember. But you know, it's the Gulf War was an experience for I think all of us that none of us will forget. And it came kind of towards the tail end of my career, the middle of my career as an officer, and it kind of validated all my training and my abilities and what I perceived myself as a leader. And I think I shared those and was lucky to have a great crew and a great bunch of people to fly and work with and live with for that 8 or 9 months that we were over there. And you know, there was I don't know that it validated the U.S. Air Force because we really didn't fight much. We bombed a lot, and I think we won, I guess you can say, except that we never left. So there, I told my wife there's always a sense that we didn't solve anything because my kids are still at risk and might have to go back and do that and clean up what's ever left of that mess. So, and I think that's one of the things we all think about as we get older. You know, what could we have done better so our kids or grandkids didn't have to deal with this. But,
Where was your family while you were over there?
Well, we were stationed in Oklahoma. They lived in Oklahoma while I was there. They came home for Christmas, sent me a wonderful picture of Christmas dinner with a lot of food on the table, which was great. But they were in Oklahoma. The kids were how old were the kids? The kids were probably like 5 and 6 maybe. And one of the things they did was turn off all the phones in the compound 2 days before, I think, or a day before. So I knew I had been selected to fly that night, and I think I called home, and I think I talked to my wife, and I just said, you know, things are going okay. I'm going to be flying in 2 nights. We're mission planning and doing everything. And she was like, okay, just, you know, be careful. We'll talk to you, kind of thing. Because she didn't realize that the war was going to start in 2 days. And then the day the night the war started, they actually were just getting home from going to like McDonald's or one of those kids' places where it's like craziness and they eat. I forget the name of it now even.
Like Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah, Chuck
Okay.
E. Cheese, there you go. And the neighbors came running down to the house when they saw her pull in and you know, put the TV on. She had put the kids in bed before they got there. And they were like, you know, put the TV on, the war started. You know what Vinny's doing. And that's when she realized, oh my God, he flew tonight. So it dawned on her, like, oh, shit, he's flying.
Mm-hmm. Did you know 2 days ahead of time that
Yeah,
it
because
was
we were
happening?
mission planning.
Okay.
And so that was, I violated OPSEC, you know,
Okay.
security violation. Great. But she went in and she woke up the kids and said the war started. And I guess my son said something like, oh, good, Dad will finish it and we'll be home. And she went in and told Susan, and Susan woke up and said, Daddy will finish this, and just rolled over and went to sleep. And I never thought anything of it, just that's what I did. And, you know, no fear, kind of no worries.
Huh.
So I was pretty lucky in that sense. And, you know, as an officer, I was married, and I think my wife figured out that out of the 22 years I was an officer on active duty, married, I was gone about 10 of those years or 11 of those years. So, she's pretty independent, very supportive, and but at the same time, there were people. I think someone made the comment to her, like when she was home at Christmas, about she said something about how much I was working and flying, and someone made the comment, well, he should be getting overtime for that, right? Making extra money. And she's like, no, they don't get overtime. So, and it's just, the public doesn't realize what we do and how we do it and the training we get. It's the way it is now.
Let me take a talking about your family. Can you tell me if you wrote to your family while you were involved in?
Yes.
Okay.
I did. And
how frequently did you write?
I probably wrote a couple times a week, or at least once a week, and I wrote to a lot of people. Writing was kind of interesting. Mail was pretty good coming to us during Desert Shield, but then it got all screwed up. Some of my cousins actually complained that I never wrote back to them, and I didn't get their mail till I was already home. We got a lot of mail, and it was that mail that from Dear Abby, kind of, I don't even remember the name of it, Operation whatever.
When they asked the general public to write?
Yeah, and I think that overloaded the system so bad we weren't getting other mail. Because, like I said, my cousin got mad, and I actually had my mail forwarded, and I got mail from my cousins in like May and June when I was home already. And so that was kind of interesting. And I even had a friend I wrote to who, when I asked how come they never wrote back, they said, well, we got really scared we'd get one of those things returned because he was deceased.
Oh.
So, it was kind of a different time, and it was hard to send anything to us really in the mail because there was actually a point during Desert Storm where munitions ran low, so all they shipped for 3 weeks or 2 weeks was beans and bullets. So we didn't get any mail, but we had the Dear Abby stuff, the Operation whatever it was. We got all those little care packages full of chapstick and sunscreen, toothpaste, stuff like that. So it was okay. But yeah, my wife was never a big writer, so not a big emailer. None of that stuff.
Did you have email over there?
No.
Okay.
No. But yeah, she's not a big emailer. So.
Okay. Did you have a camcorder with you while you were over there?
I had I think we had some disposable cameras, and some guys had cameras, but you weren't allowed to take pictures downtown or in the area, or of the compound we lived in. Mm-hmm. So I don't think, I think we all bought kind of those tourist things that show Saudi Arabia. And I'd been there once already, so I didn't need more pictures of desert. And then 10 years later, I was there again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Other than pictures like this, I can't think of a lot there was to take pictures of. And we didn't take pictures at any of the bases we flew in and out of because it just wasn't worth the hassle. One of the things that I wish we could have taken pictures of was most people don't realize that the Scud alerts that we got in Saudi Arabia came out of Cheyenne Mountain here in Colorado. And when those were broadcast, if our pilots, if we got them early enough, could look out the windows and see them flash over us when we were airborne. But there were times that I remember this one time that we were pre-flight in our plane getting ready to go fly, and a Scud alert sounded, and I remember running up to the cockpit and asking Pearls if we were ready to take off. He said, "Close the doors, let's go. We don't want to get stuck here during the Scud alert." So we closed the doors real quick, started engines, and just started to roll. And I think the tower told him to shut down and go back, and he was like, "Nope, we're leaving." And he just took off, and we got airborne, so we didn't have to like go into a bunker with all our chem gear on and sit out the Scud attack. So yeah, it was fun times. Yeah, crazy.
When did you start keeping your journal?
The day I left.
Okay.
I remember the flight over. I read through it before I came over here the last couple of days, and you know, we brought an AWACS to Saudi Arabia, so my crew flew over in an AWACS that was just loaded to the gills with extra parts, and we had to carry chem gear for the ground, chem gear for the plane. When we fly, it's a different set, and just tons of stuff, and our stuff, and our professional gear. So we were like pack mules getting on the plane, and I remember the crew forming up, and that may have been one of the hardest things we all ever did, because our families dropped us off, and we said goodbye like out in front of the building, went in, did our briefings, and I called the chaplain to come over for the crew, and Father Tom came over. He was a great guy, and heard confessions and said a prayer with us, and you know, we drove out to the plane on the crew bus and got on and loaded up and took off. And I remember it, you know, usually the AWACS plane pretty fun plane to fly, and everyone's usually pretty excited and joking around, and dead silence on the plane. And we had to refuel in Loring, Maine, at Loring Air Force Base. And if I remember correctly, we land there, and it snowed or something. We couldn't take off right away because of the runway being iced up. And the only place to go was go hang out in the chow hall and eat breakfast. And we hung out there for a couple hours and kind of napped a little bit, because we left at like 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Landed there about 10. And so we took off from there about 1 o'clock in the morning and hopped over to England and landed in England and spent the night there. And usually when the crew goes to England, it's kind of like, it's great because you get to Mildenhall, you get to the pubs, and I remember it being pretty quiet and everyone kind of keeping to themselves. You know, the guys that worked together, the weapons guys kind of hung out, surveillance guys kind of hung out. And I remember just everything being like really quiet and somber, and not the usual kind of loud boisterousness of the crew. And so it was that sense of like, it's pretty serious. Yeah.
Did you keep the journal for any particular reason?
Did I keep the journal for any particular reason? I probably wanted to document how I felt about things, and when it was fresh, and when I wouldn't be sitting somewhere in another room trying to make it sound right. And something I wanted to be able to give to my son and daughter, and maybe my grandchildren, if I ever wrote a book or taught a class, something I could refer to, or even something like this. And as I read through it, it's even pretty interesting for me to read through it, because the first couple entries I talk a lot about my family, and I'm missing them, and then it's just my own coping mechanism that I get over it in about a week and know they're okay, and nothing's going to go wrong with them, and I really just tune them out, separate them, put that wall up, because one of the things I learned early on is, even when I was remote the first time in Alaska, guys who dwell on their families just don't do their jobs well, and are always kind of in a bad mood and mopey, and you know, you can't be like that. And I'm not saying I forgot about them, it's just you kind of got to just deal with it, not dwell on it and worry about it. Mm-hmm. And then as I go through, like, you know, I could never print my journal. I think I'd have to sanitize it a little bit, because I wouldn't want to mention any names of people that, you know, I was mad at, or I thought screwed up, or whatever, to protect them and myself from being sued in today's environment. And there's a lot of information in there that I probably have to run through the Air Force in the end before I do anything. But yeah, that's why I kept it, and to really share it with my uncle, because I knew he had the same experiences, and he came to visit me in Oklahoma right after that summer, or that fall, I think, and we spent some time together, and he told me stories about things he did that he had never told me before, and it was just, I realized that now I had finally kind of met a level of, a new level of bonding with my uncle.
What were your uncle's experiences?
He was a navigator bombardier in 8th Air Force in B-17s and B-24s. Mm-hmm. And growing up, all my father and all his brothers, or several of his brothers, served in World War II. And there was a picture of all of them in uniform on my grandparents' mantle. So all my cousins and I used to joke about how one day we'd always want to get on the mantle too. And my older cousins who went in the service all got their pictures on the mantle, so it was kind of like this big cousin thing to get on the mantle, like your father and your uncles. Mm-hmm. And once I was in a war, it's like they all had kind of they all told me stuff that they had never told anybody else. And even my one cousin, when I told him this stuff, he was like, "Man, you never talked to me about that." I was like, "Yeah, I've been a war yet." Kind of that brotherhood of war thing, I guess. And it's the same thing like talking to you. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing, but there's things, no matter how much I talk about it, you'll never understand. So, but at least you're listening and people hear it. That's important to all of us, I think. Because without compulsory military or government service, the ability of society to understand what we do, why we do it, has gone down, and to the point where people they think it's for someone else to do. I really got the feeling now that the military's going to treat like contractors, guys who can't do anything else go in the military. So, we live in a different society than what the World War II vets experienced, or Korea, even Vietnam now. So yeah, this next war's got me worried. Yeah.
When did you stop keeping your journal?
I don't know, probably when I came home.
Okay. When did you retire from the Air Force?
Mother's Day 2001.
Okay.
I thought it was the best gift I could give my mother.
Okay. How did your experiences in Desert Storm affect the last part of your career in the military?
It set all of us apart. My promotion to lieutenant colonel was the competition after the Gulf War. If you remember, after the Gulf War, the military goes through this huge drawdown and reduction. But one of the first things that happened to all of us after the Gulf War was it was decided that they would mask Gulf War experience in our promotion records for the first year, I think, because they thought that was an unfair advantage to people who didn't get to go. Because you would think in the military they promote the warriors. So they masked all our records, and that upset a lot of people. And then with the reduction, it upset even more people. And when I came up for promotion in 1994 or 5, my commander at the time, I was in a pretty small year group. So when I finally got promoted, he said, it's a good thing you were in the Gulf War, because in your promotion board and the group of guys they were looking at, you were one of the few guys with Gulf War experience, and that's what really put you over the top. I was like, well, that's good to know. And I think that happened to a lot of guys. But it gave me a better sense of leadership, and when to throw down the bullshit flag on what's right and what's not. I hate to say it, but a lot of times you would say, well, that's not the way it went in the war. Excuse me. when we were training guys and doing stuff. And right or wrong, I guess we all use that every now and then. You know, most of the guys, most of these captains in this picture and lieutenants are lieutenant colonels now, running squadrons and, you know, in the headquarters and at Pentagon and making things happen. So, and that all made a difference for all of us, I think, because we had a little more authority and experience. So we had credibility. For me, in my last 2 years in Saudi Arabia, it gave me a tremendous edge with the Saudis. And I think it really helped. And, you know, it did something else for me. Growing up, I always admired my father and my uncles because nothing really bothered them. You know, I thought, you know, things were a catastrophe or a crisis, and they'd be very calm about stuff. As I got older, one day I said, you know, do you ever get, like, nervous or worried about anything? And my father looked at me and he says, you know, he said, no one's shooting at you here. And I never really understood what he meant until I came back from Desert Storm, where, you know, we'd sat out Scud attacks, we'd sat out Scud hits, you know, getting a call that the plane was targeted. So, you know, I come home and, like, you know, what could be worse than all that? Or even this last tour in Saudi Arabia where, you know, you check your car for bombs every time you drive it. You know, you worry about terrorists and getting shot at. I mean, coming home, okay, well, yeah, this is bad, but how bad it can be. And guys I know who served in Vietnam, you kind of, I think we recognize it in each other, just the way we carry ourselves or the way we talk or react to things. Like, no big deal. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
If this is a hard one, but is there anything about the Gulf War that you want people to know that you don't think the general public knows? Anything about your experiences there? Any observations that you may have?
Yeah, those anthrax shots are killing us.
Tell me about that. When did you get your anthrax shot?
You get them in a series. We got a lot of shots before we went, and then while we were there, they gave us these pills to take and more shots. And no one really, they told us it was just in case of a biochem attack. And, you know, it's kind of going the way of Agent Orange, where a lot of people got sick, and a lot of people, what do you call it? Birth defects and stuff, a higher rate in anybody who took this stuff. And, you know, they're probably going to avoid saying anything about it because, you know, if you read the papers, there's all these people who've gotten out of service because they wouldn't take them. Because no one knows what they do. And, you know, they're doing studies, and every now and then, I guess the latest study said, I've got a better chance of getting MS because of it, and some other stuff. And one of the things they say it does is kind of like, you have a problem with nerves in your extremities and your joints because of these shots and the pills they gave us. So, you know, and that's the part that's going to hit all of us. And no one's going to know what it is, but it'll all be traced to that, back to that after we're dead, probably. Do
you know how many things you are inoculated against?
Oh, God. Who knows?
Is there an official record?
Probably somewhere. But yeah, and you know, it's the VA will do their best, and the government will do their best, and it'll just be too late to do anything. Would be my guess. Yeah. But you know, I worked with really good people. We flew. One of the people that I should mention is we flew with an Army officer who was a Patriot Battery liaison officer who flew with us all the time, make sure we didn't get shot down by the Patriot. And a female officer, she was a lieutenant, I think, then, or new captain. She was just awesome. I mean, she was a real hero. She pulled people out of burning tanks and did everything. She was just a real leader, and one of those people I'd always go to war with. And she was just great. Sherry was just an awesome officer. She's still in the Army, I think. Haven't heard from her in a while. Everybody kind of lost track of me in Saudi Arabia. So, but that's okay. But that's really about it, I think. And it's just a for an Air Force guy, the living conditions were okay. It's like it wasn't all like what the Army went through, or the Marines or the Navy. And being in a big crew in a big plane is totally different. Flying a fighter, or the bombers flying out at Diego Garcia, or the guys coming over from the States on the round robin trips. So it was different. And what's unique about the AWACS is, even today, if the AWACS doesn't fly, the rest of the fight doesn't go on. So we don't always get credit for that because fighters look better. They make more noise. Any other questions?
Let me just check to make sure my battery's doing okay.
Am I going too long?
No. There is no too long.
Are you having fun?
I always do.
Do you like doing this stuff? Okay. Thank you for the water.
No problem. All right.
No, you can go in your order.
Okay. Well, let's talk about women in the military. How much of your career did you work with women in the?
My whole career.
Okay. The Gulf War was the first war that women actually fought in.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any observations about that?
I think that women who did their job well, with the same fears and the same backgrounds and capabilities and abilities that the men did. I think that I don't have the military. I think has been great for women because it levels the playing field for them. And if everyone's getting treated equal and they've got to do the same stuff I have to do and go the same places I've got to go, I mean, I'll follow them right into battle. It doesn't matter. What really ruins it for women anywhere is when they decide they're going to make the poster children. And I didn't see a whole lot of that in the Gulf War. So I think it was very positive. And as you can see, there's a lot of women on my crew, and they did a great job. So.
Were the women given the exact same background and training that you had?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There were several women that were crew commanders and battle managers, and they did great. I mean, some are better than others, and it's the same for the guys, though. I mean, it's like I said, there's the top, there's the middle, there's the bottom, and I throw guys in the bottom and throw guys at the top, and I do the same for women. They would do the same to me. I mean, it's so yeah.
Was there anything that women weren't allowed to do that you know of?
I don't think they do special forces stuff and special operations, and I don't know. And that's a decision well above my pay grade in the military, and maybe it's smart. I don't know. It would depend on the mission. I mean, when you get to mission specific, there's probably some things women do better than men, and there's some things that they don't, and vice versa. So if you're going to be dressed up like an Iraqi, driving an Iraqi truck that was stolen, out in the desert, trying to track, look for Scud launchers, I mean, how realistic would it be for a woman to fit in? So when you judge things that way, should women do this? What's the percentage? Because units can only be so big in the table of organization and the budget. And let me use this as an example. Let's say in AWACS, 15% or 10% of the, and it's more than that, but for round numbers, let's say there's 100 people in AWACS, and 10% are women. So 10 women out of 100. Well, let's say that at any time, 7 of those women are pregnant. So that means for a year, basically, they're not going to fly and do their job. So 7% of my force is down. And it's not like I can call Kelly girls and say, send me a sub today. So it affects my unit now by 7%. And then if I get my usual guys on leave, guys sick, lame and lazy, and guys away at school, I'm up to maybe 15% in a heartbeat, and now my unit's not effective because I got to be at 80% or 90% to do my job. And that's sort of a problem because you can't overman to backfill those holes. And you know, when they first said women were going to fly fighters, they kind of were trying to talk about like, well, we don't want them to be pregnant or have kids for 5 years because for the amount of money we're investing, if they don't fly for 5 years straight or 7 years, whatever it was, you know, we're losing money on it. So if you run it like a business, then you're faced with all those same things that the business world isn't faced with, because we have all these unique, particularly the war skills, you call them. Mm-hmm. So that's really, you know, if we could get around those kinds of issues, but then how do you do that? What do you say, like for every woman you get another guy to backfill them? Because, you know, the military life right now is pretty tough with deployment rates. And women more than guys get upset because they can't develop those relationships that they want when they're on the road all the time. I don't know, it's tough. It's a tough business decision, tough organizational decision, tough sociological and psychological. Like everything plays into it. That answer your question? Other than that, though, they're great.
Okay. Tell me about coming home after Desert Storm.
It was bizarre. It was really bizarre. We got orders to come home, I think, in April. So it was well after the ceasefire. And we were all pretty anxious to get home. And what they did was we left Saudi Arabia on an E3 and took it to Mildenhall in England. And we were there over a weekend, which was great. And it was really comical because they really took care of us. They came out, met us, went to our rooms, and we all took like hot showers for the first time with a lot of pressure in the water. And we noticed all the dirt and stuff that came out of our skin, the dust. And we thought we had like really good tans, and we didn't. We had tans, but not as good as we thought. And kind of the first thing we did was go to a pub. We all went out and got drunk that night. And that had to be like a Saturday, I think, because the next day we went to the club for brunch. And the girls that were serving brunch, it was a buffet, they were like hilarious because they saw us all walk in and they immediately went to the back and got like bacon. And we didn't have bacon in Saudi Arabia because they don't allow pork products. So like all the guys coming back were eating like tons of bacon and potatoes because we didn't get a lot of potatoes there. So the girls that worked there were like joking about how much bacon we were all eating. And then I remember that day just kind of like hanging out, walking around, and England. It was so neat to be in England because it's so green and smelled dirt and green and everything. Mm-hmm. And then we left on Monday morning, and I think we flew into. Where did we fly into? Loring? We might have gone back through Loring, but there was a reception there for us. You know, people came out and met the plane, brought us over to a place to eat lunch, and
what kind of people? Just
families and military people, and you know, everybody around. And then we got to Tinker, and I think 3 of us came back at once, 3 planes at once, and they had a huge reception there for us. And you know, there was. They did all this neat stuff for us, and our families were there waiting for us, and it was okay. I remember my daughter being afraid to come to me.
Why?
I don't know. She was with my one of my friends. He had been holding her, and she just stayed with him. She didn't even want to talk to me. It was pretty funny. But I came home and there was a cat in our house. I was like, was that to replace me if I died or something? So, but it was pretty nice, and people were real nice to us, and we had all flown so much that we couldn't fly for like 60 days because we had too many hours, and we all kind of went on leave and vacations, and I think I went over to instructor upgrade again, and I don't know what else we did, and then I think we went to Busch Gardens for free or something. People did a lot of nice things for everybody. So it was okay.
Sounds good. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now. How did you end up in this region?
By accident.
Okay.
My wife grew up in Horseheads, and when I went to Saudi Arabia, she decided to move home to be with her family rather than stay in Oklahoma. And it worked into her plan to give the kids 4 years of high school in one place. And so I retired from the Air Force and came back here. And I was home about 10 days and went over to talk to the executive director of the National Warplane Museum, who was also president of the Board of Trustees at the time. And we talked about getting a job. I had like 3 months of vacation saved, so I was planning on goofing off all summer. And as luck would have it, after I left that meeting, I guess a couple people in the museum resigned that day. And I got a phone call later that night asking me to come in because they needed a person. So I went over to the museum and started working 10 days after I retired, and here I sit today, the executive director of the National Warplane Museum. So it's kind of by accident, but one of the things they told us before we retired is take some time off, and I really should have, because I moved from one pretty involved job, stressful job, into another one without thinking it through, kind of, I guess, and not just relaxing. There's a big difference between being in the military and being a civilian, and I hadn't made that adjustment yet. I don't know if I have yet. I think I'm starting to. I'm dressing better, and my clothes match more. That's the most stressful thing of the day. Passing inspection with my wife and daughter. They didn't see me today, that's why I looked the way I looked.
Okay.
They all went to school and work before I even got out of bed, I think.
And where are you from originally?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
So I am a New York boy, but not from this part of the world.
Okay. And were there other things you wanted to show me?
Probably not.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you at
You're
this
welcome.
point. Thank you very much for sharing your story. And I may have questions whenever you
You
feel
can
free.
call or come over, and if you're serious about doing something jointly, come over, and probably sooner is better than later, because if we have to build something, we can get the boys working on it this winter. And what we're really looking at doing is for the opening in April, having a display of stuff from local people. So, how's that?
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.